universal knowledge, absolute weapons, and immortality. This is what Alexander the Great wanted to find in the distant northern country of Hyperborea. And many times when we talk about Alexander the Great, I refer to the event when he went into the Taklamakan desert of China with his 30,000 warriors. He lost 10,000 of them there because he definitely wanted to go to meet an Atlantean from Hyperborea, an extraterrestrial that was supposed to land in the desert with his craft and give him tremendous, absolute, advanced technology, weaponry. And he also wanted it was supposed to be a mechanism that was supposed to give him immortality. In other words, it was also an Atlantean technology that was able to switch his materiality from one dimension to the other. I do have a playlist of the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean, and he does refer in those tablets to the fact that the Atlanteans had such a tremendously advanced technology that they were using it to the detriment of human beings. And Thoth, the Hermes Trismegistus, believed that it was just a matter of time before the divine spirit, God, would put an end to Atlantis and their misuse of technology because of those reasons. So Thoth does claim in the Emerald Tablets that they had a mechanism, a technology that was able to switch them from one material state to another. So this is what Alexander the Great wanted. That's why he went into the Taklamakan desert of China. Now, the mythical Hyperborea, the country beyond the north, is overgrown with rumors and legends. Mentions of it date back many years. We know that Alexander the Great, for example, lived about 330 BC. There are debates about the existence continuing to this day. The inhabitants of Hyperborea, the Hyperboreans, possessed secret knowledge and allowed them to remain in heavenly bliss, not knowing disease and war. Treasured land of happiness and prosperity. Hyperborea itself arose among the Hellenes, the ancient Greeks, and is how they nicknamed the country far in the north. In Greek myths, the mysterious region was located beyond the land of the Scythians, and they claimed that that's where they had the white wolves. As we know, they're only in the Arctic. Now, the sun particularly never left the sky. Severe winds and bad weather did not bother the great people. The Hyperboreans were presented to the Greeks as healers, philosophers, predictors, scientists, striving for the new knowledge and pleasure. They knew no grief and were virtually immortal. They interrupted their lives only if they were bored with life and decided that they had enough for their lifetime. Apollo, the patron and hero of the Hyperboreans, was closely associated with the northern ethnic group. His servants, Aristeus and Avaris, taught the Hellenes various sciences. The rich society of the distant country regularly brought generous gifts to the ancient Greeks. Hyperborea is a typical example of an unknown country where there is no grief and disease, where everyone is well fed and happy, a kind of better world in Greek mythology. Now, where was this Hyperborea? According to the French philosopher René Guénon, it was Hyperborea that was the primary center of civilization, and only later Atlantis appeared. The exact location of the state is unknown, but presumably it could be located in the lands beyond Boreas, that means the north, somewhere in the north. The earliest mountains of Hyperborea date back to the 7th century BC. The earliest mentions, the ancient Greek poet Hesiod talks about it in his poem Theogony. The historian Herodotus and the poet Ovid also do not ignore this mysterious land. The Hyperborea was mentioned by ancient authors Pliny the Elder and the 1st century Roman geographer Pomponius Mela. In the Indian Rig Veda, Iranian Avesta, Chinese chronicles, Russian and German epics, one can find a description of a wonderful country, quote, at the end of the world, and quote, some Western historians identified the ancient Arctic country with Russia. Nostradamus, in his centuries, called the Russians the Hyperborean people. Surprisingly, everything indicates that Hyperborea was located at the North Pole. Occultist Helena Blavatsky believed that Spitsbergen and New Earth are the remnants of a once existing large ice continent. The most famous maps depicting the continent of Hyperborea include the map made by the Flemish Gerardus Mercator in the 16th century. A huge continent surrounds the North Pole with a high mountain in the center. Scientists believe that 30,000 years ago, the Arctic climate was mild. The Great Glaciation, which supposedly occurred due to the shift in the Earth's axis caused by a collision with a large asteroid, led to the extinction of a powerful Arctic civilization. Ancient myths explain the disappearance of Hyperborea by the war of this state with Atlantis. Fighting, usually powerful weapons, led to the World War, the flooding of Antarctica, and the death of Hyperborea. The secrets of Hyperborea. Legends say that there was once a golden age on Earth under the control of a highly developed civilization. The Hyperboreans were rich and free. They possessed the elixir of immortality and could live forever until satiety set in. Highly developed technology allowed them to use aircraft and weapons of enormous destructive power, providing protection from enemy attacks. According to some assumptions, the period of existence of the ancient civilization was about 15,000 years. Hyperborea has always attracted occultists and theosophists. It was believed that this state owned the great magic triad: immortality, absolute weapon, and universal knowledge. Miracle weapons in mythological legends are described as all-defeating fiery arrows that Apollo buried in the Hyperborean mountain. Both the Nazis and security officials of the country of Soviets were hunting for the absolute weapon. Nicholas Roerich was interested in universal knowledge. Searches for Hyperborea. In Russia, during the reign of Catherine II, 2 expeditions were equipped to search for the ancient Arctic country. In the 19th century, 2 expeditions to the Arctic were also carried out under the command of Karl Koldewey and with the participation of the cartographer August Petermann. As is known, they did not find the northern continent of Hyperborea. In Soviet times, in 1922, an expedition led by occultist Alexander Barchenko set off to search for ancient civilizations in the far north. Perhaps he managed to discover something interesting, but all his findings were classified. In our time, the philosopher Valery Demin, a follower of Barchenko, was actively searching for Hyperborea. It seems that only Alexander the Great managed to reach the land of the blessed. Mentions of this can be found in Russian sources and in ancient tales of the Middle East. Why did Alexander the Great turn to the north? There was a legend that Alexander the Great, as we said, about 330 BC, after conquering India, rushed to the north. This was confirmed by the drawing book of Siberia, compiled in the 18th century by the geographer Simeon Remezov, indicating the place to which the great conqueror reached. The legends of the Middle East also mention Alexander's campaign to the north, to the land of darkness. What prompted the Greek king to postpone his return to his homeland? For Alexander, a student of Aristotle, possession of sacred knowledge was more important than victories on the battlefield. Therefore, having gained access to an archive containing information about the Hyperboreans during the capture of Babylon, Alexander decided to master the ultimate weapon and gain immortality. The king, whose ancestry went back to Hercules of Hyperborean, decided to repeat the path of the hero of Greece and reach the far north. The route was suggested to him by an ancient map kept in the archive. The ancient Russian narrative claims that Alexander finally reached the shores of the Arctic Ocean, having undergone several battles with the Rus along the way. He even crossed over to the Isle of the Blessed, but apparently the king of Macedons never took possession of the secret of immortality. Death overtook him at a fairly early age at 33 years old. King of the Universe. During his lifetime, Alexander received the title King of the Universe, and every person who managed to achieve such a title dreamed of receiving the ultimate weapon. This weapon is mentioned in many ancient tales telling about the heroes and gods. Moreover, as an example, there are numerous references in Indian, Hellenic, and Eastern sources: Titanomachy, Gigantomachy, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and many others. Of course, everyone had to hear the opinion that these were not ordinary legends at all, but historical and very reliable facts, simply about data about events dressed in the form of myth, which the level of development of the people living then did not allow to explain more clearly. For example, ancient Indian literature retained a mention of a terrible weapon capable of destroying absolutely everything, Astravidya. The Mahabharata also mentioned a catastrophic weapon, the weapon of Brahma. It's described in detail, and the description is surprisingly reminiscent of the explosion of a thermonuclear bomb. When using the Brahma weapon, pillars rise into the sky, everything up to the horizon is plunged into darkness, deadly whirlwinds sweep away everything in their path. The world is burned with the terrible heat of this weapon. Thousands of people in chariots are incinerated in a terrible explosion. The burned elephants rush about in horror, not understanding where their pain and danger are coming from. Moreover, a huge iron arrow is used to deliver this weapon. Arrow in Greek is saita, meaning craft. You don't need to have original imagination to understand what we're talking about: a modern nuclear missile. There are also mentions in Hellenic mythology and Greek mythology. For example, the Roman astronomer Julius Hyginus, who lived in the 2nd century AD, talks about the victory of the Olympian gods, after which they hid their weapons in Hyperborea. These weapons include a fiery arrow and a lightning bolt, the lightning rod of Zeus. We know that he had that. Now, why not modern firearms, or maybe even Gauss rifles or lasers? The Buryats, Mongols, Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Tuvans also have stories about a terrible iron bird that could destroy an entire people, but the people were saved thanks to a fiery arrow that shot down the large iron bird. Doesn't this resemble a modern bomber and surface-to-surface air missile or an iron dome type of system? Now, Alexander kept the knowledge acquired during the campaign and the papers captured in Babylon in a special chest. After the death of the king, his archive was kept for some time in the Jerusalem temple. Then it fell into the hands of the Templars, and after their defeat, it went to the Freemasons. Mercator presumably drew this map based on Alexander's papers, and Catherine II, when organizing an expedition to the North Pole, was based on information about the Arctic ancestral home received from these people. So far, no real evidence of the existence of Hyperborea has ever been found. There are only myths, but as you know, myths do not arise out of nowhere. Findings made during Demin's expedition indicate that a highly developed civilization actually existed in the far north on the territory of what is now Russia several thousand years ago. Now, whether it was Hyperborea, the future will tell. And this is from Solask. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.